Yeah, I mean, challenging is definitely the best way to put it. But I love the people there, and I did love the experience of their culture, and the people there were so good to me that um, I've got nothing but good words to say about the people. But obviously, you're in a country that that there's not much English spoken. The culture is very, very different as well. So you've got to try and adapt to that. And me growing up as having some serious middle child syndrome, it was definitely a challenge to sort of really um, fit into it, But I think I did quite well, and I got the best out of it that I could. Looking back on that year, like that's one of my proudest years because I know just how difficult it is to do well. And I ended up building a great relationship with the fans there. I loved playing for them. My club there has the best supporters in the league by far, and they always made it a good atmosphere. And the coach there spoke a little bit of English, so we became quite good mates for the communication that we could have, and we'd go to lunch in those little sliding door rooms that you see on the movies and things like that, and have our Korean barbecue and stuff like that. But it was definitely challenging, and I've got so many good stories about that. But one of my favourite ones is the coach, who we were quite good mates, and he really liked me. But sometimes if we were at an away game, he'd call me down into the lobby the night before a game, 10:30 p.m. or something, and he'd tell me that I have to score in the first half. Otherwise I'm coming off. I know he obviously just wanted me to do well, and he was a big supporter of mine. But stories like that where I don't know how, but I always seem to be able to score in the first half on those few occasions that he told me that I had to. Otherwise, I was coming off. But things like that, it's obviously a challenging. There's challenging scenarios, and luckily, and for whatever reason, I was able to overcome most of those that year. Before I went there, everyone told me that I'd be back within a couple of months. That my body would break down, that I wouldn't be able to do it, and there was no thought in my mind other than going there and doing well. And my goal was to score 15 goals that year, and ended up scoring 20. And I went there very much for footballing reasons and to prove a lot of people wrong. I had probably a bit of a chip on my shoulder that I wanted to make sure that I could do something overseas, and so I put a lot of my energy into the on-field stuff, and completely focused on my football. But there was a side of it that I was able to enjoy in that first year, especially when there was freedom and things like that. I think a big goal of mine was always eventually to play in Japan. I think watching the league and seeing how good it was and the standard of football there, it was kind of a long-term goal of mine that eventually I would like to go there and play for a club there. And then I didn't do as well in my second year in Korea, but sort of picked up towards the end of the year. But this was through COVID, and I found that period really, really challenging. I think obviously a lot of people did, and definitely took its toll in terms of enjoying myself and being able to have that freedom, which I really obviously enjoy. And towards the end of that year, I had 1 year left of my deal at Korea, and Socceroos Osaka came in and wanted to take me to obviously their club. And like I said, with having that long-term goal of playing football over there, and Cerezo being in Osaka, which I'd actually visited the year previously and loved the city, and got to experience and see what it would be like if I did go there. It was definitely something that I wanted to do, and thought it was a good time to do it as well. Suwon Samsung were fantastic to me, and I loved playing there. I really loved the game day there because of the atmosphere, and I loved the stadium and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't easy to leave, but I knew that my long-term goal was eventually to play in Japan. So if a club like that came knocking on the door, then it's kind of hard to say no. And I was motivated to go and do well in Japan and try and do what I'd done in my first year in Korea. But again, it was through COVID, and there were so many challenges with that sort of stuff because I'd signed my contract, but then I couldn't go into Japan, and so I was stuck in Australia for like 4 months or something like that. So I was kind of like trying to stay fit, but you obviously don't want to risk any injuries and things like that. So you're kind of, on the border of kind of just not being ready, but trying to stay in some sort of decent enough physical shape so that when you do get there, you can sort of reduce the time that it takes to be ready. And, that first year was really, really tough. Spent 122 days in quarantine that year. Sort of going in and out of the country with the national team, and we're in the Asian Champions League with Socceroos Osaka. So just with everything, mentally was really, really tough. I found it hard to get a good rhythm because I had no pre-season and had so much time away from football that year definitely didn't go to plan, and I didn't do anywhere near as well as what I would have liked to have done. By the end of that year, mentally, I was an absolute mess. It was. I know it's 122 days because in my last quarantine of the year, when I was doing quarantine in Perth, coming back here, I thought I'm going to count how many days that I'd done, and I went through the whole year and counted 122, which explained why I was a bit all over the place at that stage. I'm someone who I do think a lot, and I love my freedom. I like to be doing stuff all the time, and I don't enjoy sitting around in a hotel room looking at a wall thinking. So I think that just made it so tough, and had a serious knee injury towards the end of that year, and it probably all just linked into that kind of a year. I wasn't doing very well, and the injury just probably topped that year off. It was almost a blessing to get injured and to start again, which is crazy to say, but sometimes those moments that just sort of really take you to the bottom of, especially because it was towards the end of the season. I actually remember after the injury being excited to just take my time, get back properly, and, rip in the next year. Yeah, the second year in Japan, I actually had quite a good year, although I had a lot of small injuries that I was kind of in and out with. Whenever I was sort of starting and playing, I was kind of doing all right and scoring goals and contributing to that team. We were runner-up in the cup final, and we were sort of top 4 or 5 for most of the season there. And when I was fit, I was usually, starting or coming off the bench and still doing well. So, and I definitely had an awful amount of respect for Socceroos because they just did a few things for me during my time there that I hadn't experienced before from a football club, and so I never ever wanted to do anything wrong by them because they had done so much right by me, and I appreciated everything that they had done. So I didn't want to rustle any feathers, and I still had a year left at Socceroos, and all my intentions were always to go back there and do the pre-season again, and I had 1 year left and kind of see what happened after that. I was back here in the off season, and obviously Ruben Zadkovic was the coach at the time, and Andy Keir was the sports director, and they were kind of calling me up and seeing if I'd fancy coming back. And Socceroos had been really good to me, so I didn't want to rustle any feathers, and I didn't think that it would actually happen. But Ruben just kept calling me every hour. I'm sure he'll have a laugh about this as well. So I kind of caught up with him because I'm actually, I'd played with him and know him quite well, and we were mates during my Newcastle spell and when he was at Glory as well. So it wasn't like a coach to player kind of phone calls. Do you know what I mean? It was like he just kept calling me saying, "Can we get this done?" But I had to keep saying that, I'm not sure if it's going to happen, kind of thing. And then Andy and Ruben were just working so hard at getting me here, and I'd always kind of lived by, certain sayings, and one of it was, if I did want something, I'd give it a little nudge and then see what happens. If something's meant to be, it will be. I don't like to force stuff too much because, I think previously when I have maybe done that, things haven't turned out the way that you thought they would. And so it kind of got to the point where I thought, I would love to come and play for this club again because I actually really care about it and I know that I'd enjoy my football, and I'm passionate about the place. I've got a full history with this club. It's, my whole childhood and all that kind of stuff. So I thought I'll give it a nudge and then see what happens. I remember growing up and always having the feeling that I knew I was going to be a professional footballer, and like I kind of didn't ever think about doing anything else, and just being so obsessed with it and literally spending every spare minute doing it that it wasn't even like a thought or a hope. Like I always had that feeling where I just knew that's what I was going to be. With me, it's the same with my body. I'm a guy of habits. I like to do the same things that I know work all the time. And look, you're always going to have dry spells and sometimes you're not going to have chances. Sometimes, you're not going to be in form, but I still have the belief that when I'm in the box, that's when I come alive, and that's where I like to do all of my business, and always imagine the ball hitting the net rather than like trying to score a goal and it going over the line, for example. It's the ball hitting the net that makes me always believe in it, and it's not the thought of me watching a goal back. It's always a live action of you on the field with the ball hitting a net and it rolling down the back of the net. It's what I always do. I just imagine that thought. I never try and think about how I'm going to score stuff or like where I'm going to go. Like I just know that when I'm in those good habits all the time, and I'm able to do that in pressurized situations in training, in terms of like against defenders, against goalkeepers and stuff like that, I'm relaxed going into game day because I know that when I get the opportunity, then I'll be able to do it. And I just believe in myself that that's why I'm on the field. I'm on there to score goals, and that's my obsession. It's the ball hitting the back of the net. It's the sound of the crowd after you score a goal. It's the going into the last 10 minutes of a game at HBF, and I just know that when I get the chance, I'm going to score because I know the feeling that I'm going to have afterwards, but I never think about the action of doing it. It's just the ball hitting the back of the net and the feelings of like the crowd, the feeling of getting a point, getting the winner and stuff like that. And it just creates a good feeling inside myself that I know works. My Socceroos career was definitely pretty stop-start, throughout the last, 10 years that I've been involved, or a bit longer than that. Throughout my whole career, I'd never actually had any of my family or friends at any of my Socceroos games, which is pretty crazy because, when you're representing the country, that's one of the main things that you'd like to have. But obviously, under whatever circumstances, I was never able to have that. So going into that game in Perth against Palestine was going to be the first one that I had my family and friends all at the game. My most favourite highlight is definitely the goal at HBF Park for Socceroos.
It is Martin Boyle with the cutback, and Taggart wasn't going to miss from there. 2-0 for the Socceroos.
Topped off individually a great year in terms of enjoying football, scoring goals at HBF Park, which is the most important thing and my favourite thing to do in the world. And I'd gotten the squad to camp before, and going into the next camp, I knew that if I played, I'd be able to have an impact and I'd be able to score because it's HBF Park, and I just feel so at home there, and I love playing there. It's the best place to play for me, and I'll never forget, but it means so much because there's so much more to it than just a goal at HBF Park, for example. And I'll never forget that feeling. Nah, No, I like shallow nets. Yeah, and I like the little thing at the bottom, so you hear you know, sometimes I have the microphone on nets and you hear it. It's such a satisfying sound, you know, especially in the Premier League games when you hear it. It's just, I love it.
But when you do finally pack up, how would you like to be remembered?
I like to be remembered as being part of the smell of beer and chicken treat at HBF Park, scoring goals.